Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy.
Thank you for joining us this week where we will be discussing Judas and the Black Messiah, which is about how Fred Hampton, the leader of the Illinois Black Panther Party, was set up by one of his most trusted lieutenants who was spying for the FBI.
Yeah,
bro.
It's like you gotta get your mind right for this conversation that we're about to have, right?
Yeah, like look, that was a very pregnant pause and a
very,
song
very pregnant.
that went along with that. It was Tammy. I usually start with you. I think my side said it all. So I said my piece. What?
Yo. Let me just get started on saying that everybody who knows me already knows, like, I have a little bit of a militant side to me. Black power, all of that good stuff. And I knew when I watched the trailer, I was just like, damn, like this movie gonna get me. This movie is going to get me. And yeah, it was very militant up in my place while I was watching this movie. Like very, very militant. And I just want to say that William O'Neill, okay, was
a punk ass bitch?
Nah. He was a bitch ass motherfucking coward, okay? Like, let's go straight up with it. Bitch ass motherfucking coward who refused to just take his time in jail. Like, just take the hit, dude. You did the crime. You don't betray. Like, yo, this movie had me mad. Like, I wanted to drag him out of his coffin, beat the shit out of him, and then put him back in his coffin and be like, and wait for the next one, bitch. Like I was so done.
Damn, it had you wanting to desecrate a grave.
Yes, like full on, just to feel better about the fact that, like, he was the ultimate definition of a snitch who had no loyalty to his people whatsoever. He was more loyal to money and to a white man than he was to his own people who were just trying, like, you know, like, he was. I could tell why he was a hated man. Definitely.
Like, yeah, from the time I heard about the movie, I was excited because I love Daniel Kaluuya, who played Fred Hampton, who played him remarkably.
So good. So well.
And even his dialect and his speech patterns mimicked Hampton. If you saw the clip at the end where they actually have the Fred Hampton, the real Fred Hampton clips of him talking, they sounded so much alike. And they even favored a little bit. So I think they did a great job with casting. LaKeith Stanfield was terrific. And I know you don't watch Atlanta, but he's great in Atlanta too. But I love LaKeith Stanfield, and he was terrific in this too. And he in this movie he played his role because you hated him. Like, you hated him, and you saw him for the coward that he was. Which, again, like you said, really puts it out there that such a great actor. Because I love him too. Such a great actor. On the fact of that you really did hate him, and you saw him for the coward that he was throughout the whole movie. Like, even when he tries to put out his reasons why he's doing what he's doing, with the interview and everything like that, like, even with that, you still you was just like, dude, like, you was just a coward. Like, it was really good acting, like phenomenal acting on both their parts. And it was poignant. Like, I think this movie, I'm going to say it's a must watch. And I know it's one of those, like, someone asked me when we were discussing, and they were asking me, like, what was coming up next and just what good movies I'd seen. And, you know, I told them, I watched Judas and the Black Messiah before all hell broke loose in Texas this week. We'll talk about that a different place. But and they were like, is it going to make me mad? They were like, is it going to hurt my soul? Because 12 years a slave hurt their soul. And I'm like, I said it's not a movie to watch when you're not in a good place. You know, like someone has said that they watched in the summer they had watched Slim, Queen and Slim, and I'm like, nah, bro. Yeah, and I was like, no. And I said it's a must watch. It really is, and especially if you I think it's a must watch for us and for our children, because really growing up, and of course going by the quote unquote history books, and just unless you take it upon yourself to learn our history and read more than what we're taught about our history, the Black Panthers, they're not really anything that you talk about during Black History Month. We barely talk about Malcolm X. We talk about Martin Luther King in the context of I Have a Dream. But when I was learning about the Black Panthers originally, it was always this foreboding, I guess, around them. We were taught about them in hushed tones, like they were this horrible, militant, violent group. You heard about, the robberies, and you heard about how they were violent and how they were criminals, and just made them seem like they were just this fucking gang. And you didn't really, and when you hear about Fred Hampton, when you originally read about it for years and years and years, you just heard that he was killed in a raid by the FBI, like it was justified, But
I want to say that my education in African American history and Black history was very, very limited growing up, and it's crazy
like
because.
Most.
But it's even crazier because I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. Like, I actually had a course in high school that I took called African American Literature. Like, we had these kinds of classes in my high school, a predominantly Black high school, and yet I didn't really learn true African American history beyond Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. Didn't even really learn about Malcolm X and what he really stood for until I got to college. Like, a lot of this stuff, my knowledge came about when I went to college, and I had to reaffirm my Blackness, being that I went to a PWI. And reaffirming my Blackness because I went to a PWI is where I started to learn Black history. And I didn't know anything about Fred Hampton, never heard of him even before, even with the knowledge that I gained with myself. But because all we hear about with Black history is, slavery, and people get sick and tired of that. I had a friend that sent me a message when he saw that I was going to watch Judas and the Black Messiah, and he was just like, so what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts on, one of his friends saying that we need to more get in tune with our African heritage and everything like that. And my comment was, African heritage? I'm not African. I said, what we need to get in tune with is our Black history. And not just slavery aspects, but Black history on how proud should we be to be Black in America. And the fact that we're not, our kids aren't taught that. They're not taught about the strength of our community. They're taught about how, we were slaves for so many years, and then, slavery may have changed its name, but we still have aspects of it in our society. So it's very interesting to see movies like this. And I agree that our kids do need to watch movies, but not only our kids, but I feel like I tell people all the time, like, you should be showing this to all your children. White kids, Hispanic kids, because this is Black history. This is American history, not just Black history. That's what I meant. Everybody should be learning about this, because not only us are told that the Black Panthers was basically a terrorist group, they compared it to the KKK in the movie, and I was just like, are you serious? Like, the KKK, really?
Like, and having said that, when we talk about slavery, we don't talk about the ramifications from it. We don't talk about that in a sense. You're still living through Reconstruction, and the aftermath of all that in the field of politics.
Especially where we live today. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so the more I found out about Fred Hampton, and I was like, okay. And like I said, hearing what the FBI did, and our government is a motherfucker, and the skeletons in our government's closet, and especially the FBI's closet. And this is one of the reasons why I say that someone actually needs to make a real movie about fucking Hoover. And the motherfucking
asshole. I'm sorry. Like,
yeah, because when you realize that Hoover basically was responsible for killing this fucking civil rights movement, like
he was, every aspect of it.
And the way he said, so okay, you take out Malcolm, you take out Martin, and then you take out Eldridge Cleaver, basically, because you put him in jail. He didn't die till 1998, so he wasn't assassinated, but you basically put him in jail. And that's the thing that held on to me. That's one of the things I took from the movies when they said, well, what do you want to do with him? Because he lost his appeal for, what was it, gum? Like, what did he end up stealing? Ice cream. It was ice cream.
Yeah. He was charged with stealing $74 worth of
ice cream. And so it was like, okay, y'all are going to sentence this man to years in prison for fucking ice cream? Like, and that just lets you know how, and I'm like, okay, how is that, first of all, a federal offense? Like, why is the FBI even involved in this? Second of all, when he loses his appeal over fucking ice cream and they say that he has to go back to jail, and Hoover is like, no. And they're like, well, he's going back to jail. And it's like, no, take care of him. Like, Cleaver, we put Cleaver in jail, who was, the leader of the party. I believe he was the leader of the National Party. And he's like, he became a martyr. I don't want this kid becoming a martyr.
He mentioned, like, Huey Newton, and he said, when we sent him to prison, he became famous. All of a sudden, he became more famous than he was when he wasn't in prison. And that was the problem. I just want you to eliminate the possibility of unity happening amongst and what pissed me off even more, which we still deal with today, is the fact that you have the rich, or the ones at the top, and it's divide and conquer. I tell people this all the time: divide and conquer. You have this group of people, and you tell them, well, this group of people have one more thing than you do, so you should hate them, even though you're literally on the same level economically. And we're stomping on all of you. We need to find one thing that you can hold against another group, another race of people, so that you never see all the corruption that's going on above you. And to this day, that is still going on in our society. And that's what scared them more. That's what scared them more, was the unity of all groups.
And like you said, it's been going on forever. You did it with the immigrant groups that came here, the Irish, the Chinese, then when blacks finally won freedom, you certainly did a film. And then out in the West with the Mexicans in California and all. So it's amazing, and you're always trying to get people, and that's how they get people to vote against their own self-interest.
Exactly.
But so one thing that got me is, like, when you realize, I didn't realize he was only 21 years old, and I was like, what?
How young he was, and how eloquent and
he was,
and how
he went, like, and he was a bad mother, because he went and he got the Klan, he got the white supremacists. It's like he talked to them and basically just had that same conversation, like, dude, y'all are fighting the cops just like we are. They have y'all on the same list that they have us on.
Yeah, he be like, yo, ain't your children's education just as shitty as ours?
Shitty as ours? And they want us fighting each other for what? It's like, that's how they keeping us down. So it's like, dude, he got the Klan. Like, he really went and got the Illinois Klan. Mm-hmm. And as someone who was born in the Midwest, and I didn't grow up there, but and Chicago was segregated then, because, and it's like, okay, then he went and got the Puerto Ricans and the Hispanics and the Latinos together, and it's like he was unifying all of these groups, and that fucking scared him. And it kind of reminds me of that scene in Malcolm X where he just raised up his finger and the whole crowd stopped, and then they were like, one man shouldn't have that much power. that was the throwback for me for that scene. Is like, wow. And for him to have been so young and had that much power and that much say, it was amazing to me. But yeah, he was very eloquent. And Mr. O'Neill and his bitch assness, I guess.
You right. Bitch assery.
And it was just like, dude, how could you not understand? Okay, so if you were not part of and that was the one thing. So when they got him, they made him join the Panther movement because he was black and he was their in, or was he already a part of the Panther?
No. They made him join the Panther movement.
Okay, that's what I thought. So now, if you join the Panther movement, and you see what they're really about, and there were moments where you saw, where you thought he understands, like
he was in agreement with what they were stood for.
And it's like, okay, so I kept thinking the closer he got to them, the more he saw and he understood what was happening and what they were really about.
Money will change people. It was all about the money at the end. That's what really got him.
And ultimately, wasn't it that over the years he'd taken what would be equivalent today to like $200,000?
Yeah, $200,000. But I also think it was. I think it was
the fact that he always wanted to be part of the FBI or some shit.
No,
like that.
Personal survival, because even in the end, when he changes his mind and he actually is wanting to step away from all of this and he's scared, and then Roy Mitchell has that conversation and scares the crap out of him by talking about them burning, pouring hot water on a dude's penis. And I think that's what got him is his survival tactics kicked in, and he was all about saving himself. That's ultimately what he was about.
When he threatened to out him, I get that. But I was thinking that it was. I get the matter of survival. I get all of that. I really do. But I was thinking it was going to be something more. Like, I was wondering, is it going to be a real legit threat? Like, something truly is going to happen to make you follow through with this. It wasn't just a matter of being, I don't know. I can't think of another word. Like a coward.
He wasn't a revolutionary, as Fred Hampton said. He wasn't a revolutionary. He wasn't someone who believed in the cause ultimately. He may have, liked what they stood for on some things and liked belonging, but at the end of the day, he
if you asked him, according to himself, as he was quoted, real life, because that was really the clips at the end were from the actual documentary, Their Eyes on the Prize too. He was a revolution. What did he say? He wasn't one of those fake ass armchair revolutionaries. He was out there in the streets. He was down for the cause.
Oh, please. Just because he said it don't make it true. Because at the end of the day, you were a coward and refused to acknowledge the fact that he did wrong to the Black Panther Party and to Fred Hampton. He still, to the end, refused to acknowledge his part in the destruction of the Black Panther Party in Illinois, or the strength that they had in Illinois and in Chicago. So till the end, he was still denying his ultimate role in killing what he so-called helped to build up. So no matter what you said, no matter what he said, I'm just like, please, that don't matter. You talking a good game because you want to justify your actions. You want to justify what you did for years. But it doesn't. It doesn't justify it. It was horrible. I was just like, but then to think that there's people all over it like that. The fear that they had over the Black Panther Party, the fear that they had over Black people uniting and forcing society to give them the respect that they deserve, and forcing equality and equity within society scared them. It just did, and it still to this day brings fear into certain people's hearts to think that other races that you feel are beneath you can one day get above you, or not even above you, but just equal to you. And I think that's ultimately what leads that fear. And that's even amongst Black people in certain ways too.
Well, yeah, we see it with, gerrymandering and the politics and, them passing bills to make it harder for minorities to vote and for minority groups to vote and, just all of those things. It's not about, how you want to eradicate the vote for basically whole populations of states. You want to go into the urban areas and discount those votes. You just want to wipe them out. Those votes don't count because you know who the predominant population was that were voting in those areas. So we still see it today in all of that equity. And that was the thing. And I remember, asking people who were around during that time, my mom, their messaging, the FBI and the messaging, because even back then, people thought that the Black Panther Party were these violent militant terrorists. And it was one of those, kind of like now where you hear AOC and what will they call her, lefty liberals or socialists or, Antifa, those buzzwords that they're so great with coming up with and no one really understands. And they just hear it and they go, oh my gosh, no, I have to be scared, clutch my pearls. They're coming to take your guns.
Not realizing that's all the same tactics that they did back then.
Yeah. And so it was just like, so even in the neighborhood, even in Black neighborhoods and Black communities, the Black Panthers were considered to be a group, a gang, a bunch of violent thugs, because even though they may have had the same message as Dr. Martin, it was a little bit more radical. It was a little bit more extreme, the different ways. And it's like, you didn't realize they were about feeding their community, educating their kids, cleaning up their neighborhoods. And it goes back to Malcolm X's, by any means necessary. It's like you wanted the same thing. You just may have had different ways of wanting to go about it. But then the messaging around it, a great example, defund the police. Horrible messaging. You get what it means, but when you say that, people, all they hear is defund the police, and they don't take the time to truly understand what is behind that.
Or where the money is going to go.
It's going to go, yeah.
The fact that it's going to go to educating your kids and providing a better education for your kids than what they currently have.
Yeah, it means that the bulk of city budgets won't go to the police department. No, the police department is still going to be funded. There's some people who think, but we don't live in a society where we can live without police. That's a whole different discussion, but you get what I'm saying. So, one of the things that really stuck out to me is when Roy, who was played by Jesse Plemons, the FBI agent Roy Mitchell, who was played by Jesse Plemons, where he went to his boss, and he had when he first told William the story about the snitch who had got caught in New York. And then when he went to his boss and he found out that basically it was a made-up story by their informant to get them off of his back because they thought he was being suspected. And his boss, and he was like, but we did that? And he seemed shocked. And then his boss was like, well, what will you do when your child brings home a Negro? Like, going to school. Do you want to?
I wrote that down in my notes. And what I said is, the question to every white father in America, what will you do when your daughter brings home a Negro? The ultimate question for every white father in America determines who you are as a person and a human being by the answer that you give. And when you say that'll never happen, that tells me all I need to know about who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, and it's even come where now we say, like, what will the white mothers do when their son brings home a black woman? What are you gonna do then? And I, like, he just didn't know how to answer. He was just like, but he's a baby.
Thank you. It seems completely unfathomable to him. And it was like, and then he kind of like, and and that lets you know they knew that the Panthers weren't what they were making them out to be. They knew all these people, but what they were fighting for was just so scary to them because they were
their
losing.
Whiteness. They were fighting for whiteness.
Yeah,
let's say that's what they were fighting
felt
for.
like, and I'm like, dude, it doesn't wipe off. Like, you know.
Oh my God! Yes.
It doesn't wipe off. Like. It doesn't. It really doesn't matter. But to him, that was so unfathomable. And then you just kind of saw this fear on his face, like, "Whoa, I never thought about it." And after that, because it seemed like for a moment he was starting to question, like, especially when he found out that the informant story was fake and how far they were willing to go. It seemed like he was starting to question some of it as well. But then after that conversation, his ass was all in. That's when that's when he started applying the pressure. That's when he really started applying the pressure. Before
he knew what their real goal was. Like he realized what the real goal was that they had, rather than this fake goal that they had. I think that he was influenced by Hoover's. Was it Hoover or was it just his? It was Hoover's speech on at the very beginning when they have the speech and they're in the conference and you have all the FBI agents and he's talking to them and he's talking about like the Black Panther and what they need to do and who they are. And I think
that was Hoover.
Yeah,
I think it was Martin Sheen who played Hoover.
But he really starts to buy into it after that conversation, because he went from feeling that they were real dangerous and to saying like, oh shoot, this is what we're really doing this for. We're protecting because they sold the idea to a lot of white people on, you're protecting your children's future because you don't want them infesting our neighborhoods, our schools, you don't want them infesting your family, and that's ultimately what the goal is, to stop the infestation. Is the word, is kind of the word that they use,
Yeah, and you don't want that race mixing, and God forbid you have the race mixing with those little mulatto babies running around.
How dare you?
And your children playing together, and oh my God, your daughter brings home a Negro man, or your son brings home a Negro woman, and how those nappy-headed babies running around and eating chitlins and shit.
This connects to a lot of things, because like I think of the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Please tell me you're talking about the original classic and not the Ashton Kutcher remake.
Technically, the remake is just called Guess Who. I gave the full original name of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which lets you know I'm talking about the original.
In my defense, with you, I never know. So I'm going to go ahead and sidebar. Excuse us one moment. Sidebar. You've actually seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
I've actually seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I used to be a huge Sidney Poitier. I don't even know how you say his last name. How you say his last name?
Poitier?
Huh?
Poitier?
Yeah. I used to be a big fan of his. I loved him. Like I thought, and I was really young. My mom introduced him to me. We used to watch To Sir with Love.
Oh my God. And, they call me Mr. T. My bad. Okay.
So me and my mom watched it. My mom loved him. And after that, we watched Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Now, granted, I don't remember everything about the movie. I've only ever watched the movie once. But I remember the concept of the movie. I kind of remember certain scenes of the movie. And that's what comes to mind when you think of what they were so-called trying to protect, right? With this movie coming out. And then also that came to mind was the show Queen Sugar. So in Queen Sugar, you have the very militant sibling, and her boyfriend is a white cop. Okay,
yeah.
And she's the other woman. So he was married to a white woman. He had kids, and he ends up getting divorced, and they get back together. And so she's gonna go to in this season, she's going to his family, and they showed like a clip of her going to meet his family now that they're official, and his ex-wife is there. and her having to deal with the fact that his family is talking about her behind her back, not only because she's the other woman, but also because she's a Black woman who's basically like a very Black power, you know, fighting for the cause woman.
She's blackity black.
Yeah, she's like blackity black. And then you got like, you know, this white cop, which I've always like loved the dynamics of their relationship, even as I hate certain aspects of their relationship. I love the dynamics. So when I was watching this movie and that scene comes up where he says, what are you going to do if your daughter brings home a Negro? Like, this stuff came into my mind. We've had scenes with this, and slowly we get to see the actual reality of how people react. And that's why I said your reaction determines who you are as a person, and if I want to actually like have a conversation with you, or if you can just fuck off and go somewhere on your own. Kind of.
Yeah, because it's the reality. Like, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, it was groundbreaking, like truly groundbreaking and controversial for the time. It was so controversial. And her San Francisco elitist liberal parents, that's our word of the day. They had problems with it. Her dad, played by the late great Spencer Tracy, loved him. Katharine Hepburn, who was his forever other woman, but the love of his life. Great love story, but for a different day. You just got me going on my little movie history rant. But anyway, so that was really controversial for its time. So even today, even some of the most liberal of parents who don't think that they would have a problem with it, they do. And and it questions like, and it'll have you question like, oh my God, am I the person that you realize that there are sometimes layers to your racism? Like, it doesn't, and I think that's one of the things that people are starting to realize in this day and age, that it's not always that overt, oh, fuck you, I hate you, N-word, or you don't always have to be standing up at the Klan rally, that there are some...
No, it's the passive racism that is more fearful than the aggressive racism that you can experience.
Because sometimes it's the hipster coffee dude that's the most racist, and it's like, dude, I'd rather deal with the redneck in the Confederate truck who has the Confederate flag hanging from his truck, who just stares at me like I'm shit when I walk by, because at least it's out there. I know what I'm dealing with.
Or rather than, remember the Starbucks story of the two Black dudes that were sitting in Starbucks waiting for their friend to come,
and she just called the police
and they called the police on them. And this is at Starbucks, and granted, I know. But like, I think of, when you think of like that liberal hippie kind of mindset, I think of Starbucks on like being,
or Central Park Karen in the dog walk.
Exactly.
In the bird watch.
That kind of stuff, like people who think that they're just calling because you look suspect, and never realizing that the reason why they look suspect is because you have prejudice in your mind, and you have stereotypes, and you have passive racism that you feel, and you don't realize that until you're called out on it. When people is just like, wait, so you called because there were two Black dudes sitting, and just because they were sitting there, even though majority of people that go to Starbucks, including yourself, goes there to just sit? Like, because that's what Starbucks is about. So I think like,
but yeah,
so I just think like it's that kind of stuff. And that's why I say, like, not only we should be watching this movie, Judas and the Black Messiah, but everybody needs to watch this movie to really see what our history is. This movie shows you what our history is. We need to see the ugly as well as the good. And the fact of saying that the Black Panther Party was not the evil that they were made out to be, and that our children are still being taught that they are, and I'm just like, you got to question this kind of stuff. So I appreciate the fact that nowadays people have complained enough that they're starting to make these movies about the strength of Black history and what the truth is, rather than the lies that we have been fed and told our whole entire existence.
Exactly. And I love the part, like, and you know what hit me at the end when you're reading the credits or the synopsis, or it's kind of filling you in, like his girlfriend was pregnant, she gave birth shortly after he died, and that was a gut punch. Like, he had been drugged. They basically roofied him. At one point, William thought they were giving him poison, but they were basically giving him the effect, what would be akin today to a roofie, to him, so he would sleep through the raid. And how I was telling somebody, I was like, it's, and you know, especially in the movie, I don't know if she really covered him with her pregnant body to try to protect him in real life, but you know, she was ride or die like that. She very well may have. But I'm like, it's just by the grace of God that her and her baby were not hit by the hell of bullets in here. Because they went in and they had no fucks. They did not care who they hit. It was harder, like they wanted to take everybody out.
What hit me even harder is the fact that she had to shut herself down to not react when they walked in the movie. When they walked in and they were like, yo, this motherfucker's still alive. Bam, 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 bam. He dead now. And I'm just like, the fact that she had to shut her emotions down, shut down completely, so she didn't react, because they were looking at her, waiting for her to break down over this, so they can use it as an excuse to also attack her, to also take her out in a way. I'm surprised.
Fully killed his legacy. And I'm surprised they didn't just take her out.
And that's definitely true. Like I was definitely surprised at the fact that they let her. She walked out alive, but to see the emotions that were on her face at the end when they walked in and then killed him, I was just like, that was deep. Like I was just like, damn. And then to realize, 21 years old, 21 years old, you know, and assassinated. Like we won't say, like, he was assassinated.
And that's what I was gonna say. That was the original, like, going. It just made me think of that part. But at the end, when you're reading that, and it kept saying he was assassinated, like it wasn't he was killed. It was he was assassinated, because that was a fucking hit that cost them all of $200,000, or the equivalent of $200,000. And then his family and her family. They filed and I think some other people filed a $40 million lawsuit, which was settled, when in the 90s? Was it the 80s or the 90s?
It was, and so basically,
for $1.2 million?
$1.47 million. $1.47 million.
So basically $1.5 million is the cost of an assassination. You get away with an assassination for $1.5 million. So that was the cost of a black body. That was the cost of everything, the collateral damage and everything.
But I mean, like that's with every. It makes you sad that.
And because it was the FBI in the time, because of the times and in what was still associated with the Black Panthers, they were able to drag it out for almost 30 years and still end up settling out of court for that much money. And even when I saw that, I was like, I'm fucking surprised that they ended up settling, because it was at a time where, you know, what we thought about as significant 30 years ago as to what you think we could get away with or settle with now is completely different. So it even surprised me that they settled for that much after dragging it through court for that long, because it had been almost 30 years.
It was a deep movie. I suggest to everybody to definitely watch. I've already told people, I was just like, you know, y'all need to watch Judas and the Black Messiah. And they were like, yo, is it good? And I said, it's deep. Like, whenever anybody asks me, is it good? My response is, it's deep.
I say watch it, but I also say, dude, don't watch it when you got a lot of shit on your mind. I was like, it's not.
I mean, you know, because, you know, I watched it over this blackout that we had, and and I remember, like, I text you and I said, yo, I feel very militant right now. I was like, I
wrote some other things, but yeah.
I was like, I feel very militant right now, but I enjoyed it. I really, really did. I enjoyed it. I will add it to my Black History movie list that I'm definitely going to start on, because we need more of these movies. We need more movies of Black history, because there needs to be more of a connection to Black history, which includes
that just aren't about slavery.
That isn't just about slavery, or a lot of times people get mistaken and they say like, oh, we need to get back to our African heritage. And I'm just like, but you ain't African. Like, like you need to start teaching your kids to learn Black history and to love Black history, the good and the bad. Yes, we hate the fact that every movie is made about slavery. I'm not like, don't concentrate on that, but you can't ignore the fact that for hundreds of years, that is what our history started out as. African heritage. I mean, it's not our heritage. It's not. That's not necessarily our history. That's where your ancestors are from, but that's not your history. And I get a lot of pushback on that, but that's just my opinion. I'm not going to get into it. We talk too long as it is. But that's just me.
Okay, so I am just going to say, William O'Neill, he, in the end, 20 years after the fact, he ended up killing himself by basically, I don't know how to put this. I was going to say something sarcastic.
He ran into traffic. Let's just be, he was a coward.
I was going to say,
he ran into traffic.
I was going to say he went and played tag with some cars and he lost, but not to make light of it, but he did. He ran into traffic. And this is after a man, and they want to try to say, some of his family says, oh, he felt guilty. But again, in his own words, he never felt guilty about what he did. It's almost like, and that was the hypocrisy that I saw. On one hand, he wasn't an armchair revolutionary. He was down for the cause. And it took about 5 years after Hampton's death before they realized that who sold them out and his role in it all. And once that happened, he was relocated in the witness protection program and went to California. He was in California for about 10 years or so, and then he went back to Chicago. I don't know if he used his real name when he went back. I'm sure he wasn't trying to hide, so they knew he was back. But by the 80s, the Black Panther Party and all that had pretty much been disbanded. So, and I think the people, probably about 15 years later, 20 years later, most of the people, were, I don't know, dead or just not looking for that vengeance anymore.
He was a coward. Don't nobody fucking care what happened to them. Like, I'm sorry.
But
I'm like,
I know, but I looked it up because I was wondering what happened. Like when I saw that he committed suicide, I'm like, oh, he took after the documentary. But I'm like, oh, okay, so
yeah.
But that, yeah, ultimately.
But so I will say that
how many stars? How many popcorns? Sorry.
I am going to give it a solid 4.25 popcorns. I am a revolutionary. I like it. It was a strong movie, and it definitely hit me in my Black power and heart that I have that sometimes can be a little bit too much for some people. But 4.25 popcorns is what I'm going to give it. It was a great movie, phenomenal acting by the two male leads. I will even say phenomenal acting by Jesse. What is his last name?
Jesse Plemons.
Yeah. He did a great job as well. So 4.25. What about you, Eddie?
I am going to up it a little bit. I'm going to give it a solid 4.5 stars. It was deep, and it is one of those movies that I'm definitely adding to the list. And just my all around movie list. The acting was phenomenal. It was well written, well directed. The entire cast, even Dominique Fishback, who played Deborah Johnson, who was Fred Hampton's girlfriend. I think.
Yo, was that the girl from Power Project?
Dominique Fishback, yeah.
I knew I recognized. I'm sorry. I kept trying to think, where have I seen this woman act before? And I couldn't think of it. It just popped in my head. I'm sorry, y'all. Go ahead, Eddie. My bad.
Yeah. So she did amazing.
She did.
So I shout out to the entire cast and crew of this movie. It is work to be very proud of. And yeah, power to the people. Rest in power, Fred Hampton. But look at me. Yes, I had my fist up. I know you're rolling your eyes. But anyway, so I give it 4.5 stars. And we're going to wrap this up before we get started on jump down another rabbit hole. As always, we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. Be sure to tune in next week when we talk about
all the boys I've loved.
Always and forever, the third part of the third and final installment in the To All the Boys trilogy. So until then, check us out on the website, thepopcornwinddown.com. And now that Texas is back up and running, we will be too. We still need a sound effect, but plug. Again, that's thepopcornwinddown.com. And be sure to like and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. And until next time, I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy.